Okay. Lord Magellan. I'd like to share a deeper meaning of the Sabbath. There is the literal physical Sabbath that was given to Israel, but there is an underlying message. That underlying message is the reason why God gave the Sabbath. So, to give an overview, there is a Sabbath of days, and that is what was stated in the Ten Commandments. There is also a Sabbath of weeks. This was mentioned in the feasts. There is a Sabbath of years. The sabbatical year, the rest of the land. And there is a Sabbath of decades. Yeah, Jubilee. There is the 100 years Sabbath. I forgot the example in the Bible, but the big that's hundreds. We are in decades. So centuries. The centuries of Sabbath. I forgot an example in the Bible. Maybe you can. The next is millennium. The millennial Sabbath. There is a Sabbath of millennium. So, if you go to the feasts, sometimes the 8th day is also a Sabbath. So the mystery of the Sabbath, you have to go back to Genesis. When you read the Ten Commandments, he will quote Genesis. Remember the Sabbath. Yeah, open it up. Remember the Sabbath days. For in 6 days, for in 6 days God created the heavens and earth, and on the 7th day God rested. The word rest in English, Old English, what does it mean? I hope you can adopt your young people. But the Jinjing, what does rest mean? What does rest? You should teach in English. So, Brother Robert, what does rest mean? Brother Reggie, Brother George, you're speaking Hebrew. I'm talking about English word rest. What do you mean by rest? Stopping work. It's not work. It's stop. Any stoppage. Now it's just a connotation that we need to rest because our bodies get tired. But God does not get tired. God stopped in creation. For 6 days shall the labor, verse 10. Verse 10. Brother Rob, Patrick, could anyone adopt them? Could you adopt each other, the verse? Brother Lito, Brother Ricky, adopt the young people there. Verse 10, they're not focused. My time is running up. Brother Lito, Brother Ricky, help the young people to focus. The 7th day, in it thou shalt not. Verse, I think the remembrance, for in 6 days. It's in verse 11. Huh? So, in Genesis, go to verse 11. Brother Ricky, could you adopt your own child, Rap and Patrick, so that they could move on to verse 11, or they could supervise Sister Oya? They're lost. Okay. Anyway, in the Ten Commandments, God called in remembrance the one in Genesis. Genesis 2. Okay? Now, I'd like us to there's verse 11 just right now. Wait, time is wasted. Please count us out. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth. That is a quotation from Genesis. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 4. Look at the young people. Look at them if they're doing it. Look at their cell phone if they're looking at some other things. Don't be. Hebrews chapter 4 in verse 4. It's also quoted again. Hebrews chapter 4. Could you read for us, Brother Rap? Could you give him a microphone? Brother Patrick, give them a microphone. Please look at their cell phone. Okay. While the microphone is being given, this is a quotation from Genesis. Could you read? Where's the microphone?
Hebrews 4:4. For he spake in the 13th days of the 7th day on his wives in God takes the 7th day from all his works.
Brother Patrick, verse 5. Brother Patrick.
And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest.
Now, when you read this in this place again, that's another quote in Psalms. Verse 6, Brother Pat.
Verse 6. Seeing therefore it remaineth, that some must enter therein, and they to whom it was first preached entered not in because of unbelief.
I wish to show the deeper revelation about the Sabbath. In Genesis chapter 2, when God reached the 7th day, there is no more evenings and mornings. Everyone say evening and morning.
Evening and morning.
The first 6 days has evenings and mornings. But the 7th day has no evenings and mornings. So if you can draw it here, the first 6 days are creation. The 7th day has no evening and morning. So the 7th day is a starting point in time where there is no more evenings and mornings. You see that?
Right.
So the first 6 days has evenings and mornings. That means to say, it represents something in time that is temporal. The 7th day represented eternity. It includes the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, 11th. Because the 7th day represented you enter into a rest that you don't turn back again. In Hebrews chapter 4, when they enter the promised land, they already possess the promised land. They're not going to leave the promised land anymore. But Paul said, those who some did not enter because of unbelief. So the Sabbath represented an entrance into a spiritual rest like the promised land. Let's read Hebrews chapter 4, verse 9. There remaineth therefore a rest for the people of God. What kind of rest? Those Israelites, those who murmured against Moses, they did not get spiritual rest. They fulfilled the physical rest. But the spiritual rest is something about faith of His Word. Let's go up to verse 8. Verse 8. If Jesus had given them rest, that's Joshua. Huh? If Joshua had given them rest, would he not have spoken of another day? That another day is in verse 7. Could you read for us, Brother Pat? Verse 7. That's again
Again,
this verse.
limited a certain day, saying David, today, after so long a time, as it is said, Today, if ye will hear this voice, harden not your heart.
If you hear His voice, the Sabbath represented a point in time you heard His voice. Everyone is called by God. When you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. If the Israelites hardened their hearts from the promise that they can overcome the giants, then they could not enter the rest. They could not enter Canaan. But they're fulfilling the physical day of the week rest. That's the external part, because of course they will be killed if they did not fulfill that. But God showed for the future how we will enter into rest by accepting His beloved Son. So His beloved Son represented the Sabbath. He is the Lord of the Sabbath. He is the reason why the Sabbath was given. Of course, not just the Sabbath, and many other things. Why God gave the law, why God gave the commandments, why God made history, actually. All things centered around Him. Now, even these days, weeks, years, decades, and millennium, these represented Moadim, a point in time. You know, we do not live like Gnostics, unbelievers, atheists, like the world will just continue forever. 2 Peter chapter 3, everything continue as they did from the past. There's nothing new under the sun. One day, God's gonna cut your time short. God's gonna intervene in this world. The time of this world is on borrowed time. You understand God's timing? You know there is a borrowed time. There is a church ages. Barmanan, have you put illustration of the eternity here? Not yet. So please do. We have the internet connection now. So, there's the church ages, there's the millennia. Since the time of Adam, it's almost 6,000 years. If we go to the 7th millennia, there will be a rest of the earth. The whole world will experience a forcible rest. The kingdom of the world will become the kingdom of our Lord and of His Christ. That means to say, the whole world will enter in a kind of rest. And after the millennium, there is the great white throne judgment and eternity. And eternity also represented another point in time wherein the whole world will enter eternity. Millennium is just an example of how to show the governments of the world ruling without a rod, or ruling by the rod of iron. In eternity, there will be no longer be a rod of iron. All these is represented by the Sabbath. The Feast of Weeks, it represented the church ages. So, the sabbatical year of the land, it gave us the 70 weeks of Daniel. The 70 weeks of Daniel is a prophecy about Israel, and it also will involve the church mysteriously. The church will be involved in it. How? What happened in the 7 weeks of Daniel? All of those stem from 7. When you hear 7, it's Sabbath. From the Feast of Pentecost, you call that in Hebrew Sabbath or Sukkot. I forget the words. The one is tabernacle, the other is Pentecost. The Feast of Weeks and the 50th day, it represented a jubilee. Something will happen on the earth. It represented the 7 churches, the 7 golden lampstands in Revelation. Now, it is for the true bride to know, so that they will be distinguished from denominational believers that are close-minded. If you are Berean, you are progressive. If you are progressive, then you are open to know the mysteries God has hidden in His scriptures only for His very elect. Not all those things in the Old Testament has an essence, has a meaning. How much time do I have? 5 minutes? Okay. So, in Psalms, it was quoted in Hebrews chapter 4 that they did not enter into his rest because of unbelief. Now let's talk about unbelief. Today, when you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. This is the same spirit of Nicolaitanism. You're close-minded. You don't want to hear it because you have your own denomination. The same thing that happened to the Jews. When they encountered Jesus Christ, they were contented with what they're doing. We already fulfilled the law, so we don't need to hear your revelation. It's the same thing happening to the churches today. They are doing the physical Sabbath, but they miss the purpose, the meaning, the essence of that Sabbath. He said, He is the Lord of the Sabbath. They should be celebrating Him. It's the same thing happening in the churches today. The churches today, they boxed it in. They looked upon the Sabbath like something in the Old Testament. There's nothing in the New. But they failed to see, most of them failed to see the type. Well, some of them have seen the type. It's Jesus Christ. But how do you accept Jesus Christ? Today, when you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. But they say their voice is their denomination. When they want to hear the voice of Jesus Christ, they're not going to listen to anyone outside the church. I'm putting this out to show the real Sabbath is you stop closing your minds from objectively understanding what others are saying. Because it's also the commandment of God. The essence of the commandment of God is when someone has a claim to the truth, to the scriptures, you don't ignore them. You check it out. That's the urim and thummim. You prove it out. If it's true, if it's scriptural or not. Because God may be speaking to them. God could speak to others, even although others are false, like Balaam. But God is speaking through Balaam. So it doesn't matter if it's true or false. The reason we have the scripture, God will directly speak to us, not by being close-minded. Because we could, 2 Timothy 3:16, prove all things by the scripture, for reproof, for correction, to prove what is acceptable and true. So, through that way, you could walk in deeper truth. In deeper truth. So, the fulfillment of the essence of the Sabbath is the spiritual attitude. When you meet others, like in Berea, when they heard Paul preach, they did not close their minds, but they searched the scriptures whether those things are true. That is how, in the day when you hear His voice, you harden not your hearts. Because you do not prejudge others, but you take note of what they're saying, and go back to the scriptures, if they're true. And when the Bereans found Paul, those in Berea found what Paul was saying was in the scripture, they accepted and they fulfilled it in their lives. So that is a deeper essence of the Sabbath, compared, of course, to those that the Jews that are physically fulfilling it, they think it's over. It's like the Catholics or Protestants or other denominations, they're boxed in. The revelation of God as though it's already finished. It's not just the end-time believers that say it's already finished. Denominational spirit says the revelation of God is already finished. There's nothing more to reveal. You don't need to hear others anymore. That's the spirit. How many minutes do I have? 1 minute. Okay, so these are some of the examples. I don't have time to look at each of them, but you do some research. Look at the days, weeks, and years, and how they are made use in prophecy. So you have to study prophecy if you love God. That is how you accepted the Sabbath of God in your hearts. God bless you.
Okay, salamat. So, malinaw, no? Progressive o deeper meaning of Sabbath. So, nakita natin, narinig natin yung view ng ating kapatid. Next, Brother Jerry, another tusok, 20 minutes.